From UFOs to psychic powers and government conspiracies, history is riddled with unexplained events. You can turn back now or learn the stuff they don't want you to know. A production of iHeartRadio.
Hello, welcome back to the show. My name is Matt.
My name is Noel.
They call me Ben. We're joined, as always, with our super producer, Dylan, the Tennessee pal Fagan. Most importantly, you are you. You are here. That makes this the stuff they don't want you to know. And we're coming to you with a feel-good, optimistic banger of an episode this evening. Folks, fellow conspiracy realists, friends, and neighbors, could you survive a nuclear war?
No.
Maybe.
All right. Well, hey, it was good to hear from everybody this week. We'll talk to you next week.
We'll do our best. Hey, duck and cover. Duck and cover. That's all it takes. Just get under that desk.
Oh, yeah.
Tuck in.
I know we're from slightly different backgrounds. I'm old enough to remember those drills and just how surreal they seemed. It is true.
Wait, you actually did duck and cover drills?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, as a child.
No.
Yeah. Not Cold War era, but just weird teachers. They would say,
okay.
Because, there was the one
just for funsies.
Tornadoes where you had to go and go in the hallway face down, ass up. And then the nuclear war drills were, like Noel was saying, duck and cover, get under your desk, and just hope that your desk is magic for some reason.
Yeah, that way you'll get vaporized in a fetal position for posterity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so you can look like that guy in Pompeii.
Exactly what I was thinking.
Who got caught enjoying himself. He didn't really. It's just how the lava hit him. So ever since August of 1945, the world has been terrified of nuclear Armageddon. And we know why August is the linchpin here. It's because of the disastrous bombings on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. They fundamentally changed war. They fundamentally changed how nations work for or with or against each other, because it's the first time in known history that human civilization had weapons that could not just end a conflict, but could end civilization as we know it. And this is a spiritual successor to an episode we did earlier in, I want to say May, maybe, of this year. We asked what actually happens in a nuclear war. And then toward the end, Matt, Noel, as we recall, toward the end of that, it occurred to us that a lot of people listening were saying, okay, yes, I get the science and the conspiracy afoot, but what about me, you guys? What about my family? And the natural follow-up was, could I survive this thing you're describing?
Yeah. Do you have a fallout shelter? That's the first question.
This episode goes out to anybody who lives somehow in the perfect places between military bases and large cities. There's at least a dozen of them. So this goes out to you.
This goes out to you, and we're gonna help as a group. We're gonna figure out together the grand escape room that any region becomes in the event of nuclear deployment. Here are the facts. All right, first, let's start with good news, nuclear blast, fact and fiction. The good news is this. Here's our headline. Almost a century after the two disastrous attacks on Japan, those are the only examples of nuclear weapons being used in active warfare. So that's good news.
But maybe today.
Yeah, it might be the day. That's where I wake up every day, every evening. I think.
Itchy button finger, right?
Mm-hmm. Now, this isn't, however, to caveat this good news, this is not to say those are the only nuclear explosions, nor the only nuclear disasters. In fact, that couldn't be further from the truth. Since Oppenheimer, the guy, not the film, since his first nuclear test, thousands of nuclear devices have been detonated around the world, and they've also grown more powerful with each successive generation.
Yeah, it's funny though. I mean, I guess when we think of nuclear disasters, Mainly, I think when it comes to things that are maybe more likely to happen, our mind tends towards nuclear power and meltdowns and things like 3 Mile Island and obviously Fukushima, very recent history. I mean, those are all products of the same technology, just harnessed in a different way.
Chernobyl as well. We see that there's always going to be a threat of the kind of disasters that you described, Noel. And I think you're absolutely on the money there with the concept that, post Cold War paranoia, that's usually what people think of in the West. They think of accidental meltdowns, right? They think of industrial disasters. That could, I mean, that could well happen. All of this could happen tonight, as you're hearing this. The tricky thing is, we still don't know how many nuclear detonations have occurred. The official estimate as of July 15th, 2025, while we're recording, is something to the order of 2,475 nuclear detonations. Mostly
these would largely be tests, right?
Right, mostly tests, and the vast majority, like upwards of 85%, were tested by the U.S. and the USSR during the Cold War, but we're still not sure how accurate that number is. Shout out to things like the Vela incident. Remember that one?
Yeah, and shout out to Iran and some of the concerns over that, whether or not they are founded. That is not for me to say. It feels like it's become more of a political chip than an actual concern. But maybe that's not true. I mean, maybe this isn't the space to talk about that. But I do wonder sometimes how much is being made of this, if they really are just seeking more nuclear power in that respect, to be technologically, on the same page as the rest of the world, or if they are being bad boys and doing these kind of, weapons tests in secret.
Oh, boy. Yeah, it's a bag of badgers.
Yeah. So let's remember the Vela incident and things like that. The instruments that are used to determine whether or not a nuclear blast has occurred, whether underground, in the atmosphere, or on land, those instruments sometimes are faulty, as in, or give a false positive.
Yeah.
But then perhaps sometimes we missed something because it's a smaller scale, like a tactical nuke that's being tested, or just something different, right?
Or it's very far under the ground, such that it could be perhaps confused with a natural earth fart, the fancy name for that being an earthquake. That goes to the example of something like DPRK, which is actively, for a time, was actively rushing out production, and now is actively attempting to make things more reliable on their end. So a lot of funny earthquakes, a lot of conversations in the United Nations that sound like passive aggressive relationship arguments, where one ambassador is going, North Korea, I just think it's funny how you're not really on a tectonic trouble zone. Anyway, this is the issue we're at. We know that, to those excellent points, various countries have and continue to pursue nuclear technology in secret, which means we have a lot of unknowns. We don't know how many nuclear weapons actually exist. And for the ones that we know do exist, we don't know how many of those extant weapons can actually work. After the fall of the Soviet Union, all their stuff went pear-shaped. A lot of their nukes got mothballed or fell into disrepair because these are not who was that guy who mentioned on Ridiculous History? These are not Ron Popeil, set it and forget it, made for TV gadgets. They need active maintenance. Yeah, you can't just showtime them. So this all leads us to a fact as chilling as it is simple. Once a nuclear exchange begins, we don't know how many possible detonations could occur in a domino effect of retaliation, right? How many bullets does one side have? Bullets being bombs.
I believe the term is mutually assured destruction.
Right. The theory of MAD, which has held more or less for now. We really don't know. And second, we, the public, don't have the most accurate understanding of a nuclear attack, how it would actually work. And a lot of that falls at the feet of earlier science fiction, dystopian, and disaster films, right? And novels and short stories, the stuff we're familiar with. Some of them are highly accurate, like The Day After Tomorrow is a great one, but other ones are kind of fallen into the blockbuster boom and smoke and fury kind of thing.
Wait,
sound and fury.
like Moonfall.
Wait a minute.
Right?
I'm recalling The Day After Tomorrow. In that film, it's nuclear winter, right? That's one of the things that it portrays.
Jake Gyllenhaal
Yes.
is the protagonist? Okay.
Correct me if I'm wrong here. I seem to remember a situation where they do nuclear winter on like Fast Forward, where there's a wave of absolute frozen, like well below zero kind of temperatures, where it sweeps through almost like a blast and then freezes everything in an instant. I don't know. Maybe
There's
I'm wrong.
definitely some freezy bits. I do recall. I think it was.
It's the idea that there's an ice age. That one, I'm thinking, I might be thinking
nuclear
of a different
winter
book.
As a concept. Is I've always thought nuclear winter wasn't actually referring to climate change; that it was more of like an effect. But is nuclear winter, does that refer to changing of like getting things out of whack because of an explosion?
Because of pyrocumulonimbus clouds that black out
because
the
of the
sun.
stuff released. Yeah, wait. I'm thinking of a different thing similar to but more accurate, because Day After Tomorrow, now that for some reason mentioning the actor brought it back to my mind, so thank you. That's the one that is that's an example of one that is considered highly inaccurate.
Oh, okay. Got it.
I think NASA scientists later said there was at least one who said this was so bad it inspired me to become a scientist. So we see that. I mean, that can be a problem for the public, because in this instance we see two sides of the same problematic coin, right? The idea of embellishing a nuclear blast, arguing that a single bomb could spell doom for the Earth entire, not necessarily true. But then on the other side, some fiction can underplay the possibilities too, underplay the idea of retaliatory strikes and the newer classes of nuclear weapons. I mean, let's remember, as we talked about in our previous episode, that despite all the horrific events those two bombs in Japan wrought, neither the Hiroshima nor the Nagasaki bomb reached their full theoretical capacity.
Right.
No, I believe both of those were detonated in the air, like right before they hit the ground. So I think we talked about that in our previous nuclear episode, but just the concept of where you detonate, just from a vertical standpoint, is freaky and fascinating. Yeah, specifically because of that initial fireball that they generate, and how those were so tiny compared to the missiles and the warheads that are being developed right now.
Let's talk about that. Let's kick some numbers real quick.
For sure. The Hiroshima explosion was 50 kilotons, which is the equivalent of 15,000 tons of TNT. The Nagasaki explosion, on the other hand, was 21 kilotons. Unbelievable. I mean, it's hard to even imagine. You know, I mean, you start getting into like, I don't know, when they talk about like, characters in RPG games who are like nukes, who can do nuke attacks and do like 15 million damage or whatever. That's what the territory we're entering here, like Dragon Ball Z level destruction.
Yeah. But if you like, I was trying to think about this in a range of computers, like with kilobytes.
Yes.
Right. And because those are in the kilobytes range, if we're talking computer power, you're putting that over to nuclear power. The ones that came right after are in the megatons, which would be like megabytes, right?
And then, God forbid, we get into gigatons.
Right now, we can already see this escalation. I like the computer processing analogy. I also like this is a weird one. I'm trying to keep things semi-positive. The Scoville unit or capsaicin analogy, right? People discover how to make some hot sauce, and then the hot sauce war began, which continues today, right? Well past the point of stuff people would recreationally eat. The vast majority
it is a lot
of the
like
public.
that, actually.
Yeah,
for sure.
Because of the the stuff that gets really, really crazy in one of those sauces is the capsaicin extract stuff that's like concentrated, which is exactly what you do. Yeah, it's exactly what you do.
Well,
Exactly.
And shout out to, speaking of hot sauces, shout out to our listener, Peter, who also is a fantastic gardener and is coming over to help me with some yard stuff in a bit and is bringing us all some of his own home brewed mega spicy sauce.
Oh, nice.
With like he gets these, he's really into horticulture and he grows some of these hottest peppers known to man. And so we'll see. We'll try it out together.
Peter, you went too far. You got so into figuring out if you could do it that you never asked if you should. No, it's great, and we're grateful. So send some.
Yes, please. And let's double down and thank Papa Caps for sending us another one of those awesome boxes of his delicious,
is that at the office?
Hot stuff.
It hasn't come yet. Or it has come?
I don't think it's there yet.
I saw he wrote an email, said he was going to. He did send some before, and we tried them, and I still have some in my fridge. And I had a little get-together where I had one of the ghost pepper ones, or no, it was the Reaper ones out on the table. And I just assumed anyone that was going to try a hot sauce knew what a Carolina Reaper was. Whoops. But somebody did not and doused their food in it, and I felt really bad. Like I had dosed somebody with LSD or something.
You didn't feel as bad as they did later. You know,
truth.
There are no atheists on the commode in that situation.
True.
I'm going to keep that. That's a weird one. We're going to keep.
You should.
Here's the thing. Okay, so Hiroshima, Nagasaki, Fat Man and Little Boy, terrible weapons of destruction. But the new kids on the block are vastly different kaiju. The one example would be the B-83. The B-83, American made, yeehaw, it can detonate with the force of 1.2 megatons. So not quite gigatons, but a megaton is the equivalent of 1 million tons of TNT.
Dude, again, unfathomable. So a little extra calculus here, some back of the napkin math. That means that this single bomb could create an explosion 80 times the intensity of Hiroshima.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and further, the B-83 is not the largest nuclear bomb out there. On the U.S. side, the largest ever that has been tested that we know of is Castle Bravo at 15 megatons. And the biggest detonation in all of history known so far was the Soviet Union's Tsar Bomba. This is the ultimate kaiju.
Tsar Bomba.
Sorry. Where do they keep it?
Well, and those are individual, essentially not warheads, it's individual bombs, right, that are built with the purpose of testing. The scary part is when you think about the number of warheads that have been created, and then adding to that, multiplying that, is the number of warheads that are fit into the tops of some of these larger missiles that are on prep around the world. Not just the US and Russia, we're talking India, Pakistan, a bunch of other places where you launch one of those missiles and you've got essentially 10 nuclear bombs that end up going off.
Right. Think of the firework canisters that hold multiple iterations of fireworks, right? They look great in the sky because they're not getting
one of those
radiated.
pops.
Each one of those is its own separate bomb. And then also add to that, their locations are not necessarily stationary. We've got some folks with a nuclear sub experience in the audience tonight. You know exactly what we're talking about. It's the reason you have to be so vague when you talk to your friends and family back home. These invisible locations, they're crucial to war, but they're also a wild card that could come back to bite you. The Tsar Bomba was detonated in October of 1961. And it was right over this island chain in the Arctic, Novaya Zemlya. The reports from the event tell us that the shock wave from this blast, and we'll get through the patterns and the process of a detonation here, the shock waves from the blast traveled around the Earth not once, not twice, but 3 separate times. A nuclear DJ Khaled just saying another one.
Yeah, it's also something like, didn't Superman do that? He circumnavigated the globe to reverse time. Remember that?
In one film, he did.
Yeah,
yes.
He did do that. By the way, y'all, I don't know if you've seen it yet, but the new Superman is very good. I quite enjoyed it.
Oh, yeah.
Really?
A lot of fun.
Yeah.
It's a fun movie.
I like when
it's a romp.
As a comic enthusiast, I love when new characters from comic books are brought to the big screen. So they got
Mr. Terrific. I bet you
Mr. Terrific's great. Metamorpho makes an appearance. Yeah.
Yep. Didn't know a lot of those Golden Age or Silver Age characters, but I just found it to be a film made by someone who loves the source material, which is James Gunn's thing. So yeah, check it out. I think you'll dig it.
Also, no big spoiler here, but it's not the same origin story, which has been told 1,000 times. Which
it's cool though, because it starts in media res, where he already is
Mm-hmm.
established, and it's, I don't know, not to get too far.
That's what I'm saying. I like it.
Yeah,
it's like
great.
Spider-Man started off without it being an origin story all the time. Anyway, this is not Mr. Terrific, but this idea of nuclear war is Mr. Terrifying. Still, all out,
still a T.
All out war is theoretical. To date, none of Earth's many regional and global conflicts have crossed the threshold into nuclear exchange. The U.S. attack on Japan in World War II was one-sided, meaning that nobody struck back at the U.S. with nuclear weapons. There's plenty of
because they didn't have them,
because
right?
they didn't. That's the main and only reason, to be quite honest, and that should scare the crap out of everybody. But there's plenty of blustery talking, but the truth, and thank you for the beep, Dylan, the truth of the matter is most world leaders with the capability to deploy and detonate nuclear weapons in private, they kind of do not want to do it. The geopolitical risk are super high. Of everybody else in the room, at least a handful of others have a gun as well. We don't have to go into the details of MAD, mutually assured destruction, but the gist of the argument here is that having nuclear weapons and having other people know that you possess them turns out to be way more advantageous than actually using nuclear weapons.
Yeah, because everybody knows if two countries of sufficient size, and especially if two conglomerations of countries, right, to things like NATO, got together and had a little nuclear battle, they know there's nothing left. So the calculus becomes, could we gain control over that which remains? Like literally on the planet, if we wanted to go this route.
And will it be worth it, right? What will the advantage of owning ashes ultimately become?
Yeah, it's part and parcel, I guess, of the term fallout. It's like there are consequences of this technology.
That's where the theories of, things like the Great Reset are pretty creepy, because you imagine someone who gets it in their mind, or it becomes their mission to do that very thing, to reset everything, which would, if you wanted to go that route, it would require a lot of destruction and a lot of death and a period of horrifying living, right? And we're talking not just a year or two.
Right.
Right.
We're talking 1 or 2 generations.
Yes.
And if you were going to do it right, it'd require a lot of prep work.
Yeah. It's a kind of, it's an apocalyptic accelerationist approach. And the accelerationism now is usually thought to be in the realm of crazy dystopian tech religions. But a nuclear version does exist. In fact, a story the Jedi won't tell you, there were armchair talks and speculation that got very close to the actual drawing board decades back about having how to define a good nuclear war. And a good nuclear war was ultimately a proxy war wherein the two nations at odds privately or tacitly agreed that they would only deploy their nuclear weaponry in this third country that they had sought to be the proxy battlefield. So that would be Afghanistan, but with nukes, And it got close. I'm going to be honest.
I don't know how far ahead they were in production or thought about this, but a lot of the stuff that's depicted in the new Superman movie is very much a lot of what's going on right now. And with some of this nuclear saber rattling in terms of who controls the superhero, who controls the meta-humans. I think it's well done and not overly heavy-handed or like politically divisive. I think it's good.
Yeah. Do check it out. And still, as we said at the top, the issue is that this precarious balance that we often call MAD, it can shift at any moment. As we record tonight, the world you live in relies on a series of assumptions that only hold because they have worked up to now. And we hope they work today, and we hope they work tomorrow. Matter of fact, if we want to be super optimistic, we hope they work forever. But that is super optimistic. We're talking about things like the assumption of rational actors in positions of power. That doesn't always exist. We're talking about mutually assured destruction, which could be violated at any time. So what happens when that all flies out the window? When the first bomb detonates in a conflict and the other nuclear powers cry havoc and let loose the dogs of war, feeling compelled to retaliate, how far does it go? What could you do, folks? Could you survive?
Well, we'll find out after a quick word from our sponsor, Globochem.
And Vought.
And, of course, Mackenzie and our friends at Halliburton. Here's where it gets crazy. All right. That question, could I survive a nuclear war? Weirdly enough, the answer you're going to discover is the same thing we always hear in real estate. Location, location, location. Similar to, Matt, what you were alluding to earlier there. It's your proximity to the initial blast, your proximity to high-value targets. And as you were saying, Noel, not just your ability to escape an area before or afterward, but the possibility of having a reliable shelter.
In advance. Yeah. This also includes concerns about your proximity to other things that could be affected by the blast. Some of these knock-on consequences, like wildfires, chemical spills, leaks rather, all the other dangerous stuff that could affect humans outside of just the radiation and the boom boom of it all. There's a lot of things that this kind of havoc would unleash.
Yeah, think about, especially here in the United States, think about all the infrastructure that is hanging by a thread, like a loose tooth. Think of the fact that clean water is largely dependent upon water processing sites that are already quite vulnerable. Think about the power grid, which is just going to get absolutely walloped by a resulting EMP, electromagnetic pulse. Think about, the wildfires that happen without bombs every year, right? And all of the, as you said, Noel, all the toxic, nasty stuff that is increasingly less regulated and just sort of put in tanks that are not hardened against nuclear blast.
Stuff that goes awry even outside of the event of a nuclear blast. Malfunctions and leaks and chemical plant explosions and fires, and let's not even talk about the nuclear power plants themselves.
Yeah, that's a
whole other thing. If there were a nuke detonated next to the nuke, that's kind of double nuke.
Well, it's at least radiation leaking out into water sources that you would probably need.
Yeah, and if you wanted to seek treatment for any of those sort of knock-on consequences, guess what? The medical infrastructure is wrecked as well. So you could then end up being in a situation where something as mild as an infection that could have easily been treated will kill you as surely as a nuclear blast, simply because you do not have access to medicine or medical care.
So, and the servers are down, so all the AI robots can't perform any surgeries.
Right, or tell you really bad medical advice. Right. You know what I mean? How else would you know that you should inject bleach?
This one, wait, this one goes in your mouth.
Yeah,
This
exactly.
one goes in your butt.
Shout out to Idiocracy. Yeah. So there is no clear-cut way to estimate the impact of a single nuclear bomb because it depends on so many other factors. We kick some stats about payload, and yes, those are mission critical. It's important to remember those. But you also have to remember the weather, the time of day of detonation, the geographical layout of where it hits, whether it detonates on the ground, in the ground, above the ground, and if so, how high, what's the elevation. These all play into what happens next. And there's been a lot of work ever since, honestly, since around the time of Oppenheimer, there's been a lot of work modeling what would result here. And what we see time and time again, the models don't always agree, by the way. What we see time and time again is that the effects are catastrophic far further than we might assume based in film and fiction. You can see plenty of videos about this, some of more accuracy than others. ASAP Science did a cool thing a while back with an analysis of the detonation of a 1 megaton bomb, right? So a little bit less than B-83. And they said, okay, how far away do you have to be as a human person to survive? Even if you're within 5 miles of this detonation, 5 miles, you will still get riddled with third-degree burns. And without medical care, you will die an agonizing death. Within 7 miles, you'll still get first-degree burns, and that depends on your clothing and on the weather in your part of the world. We're not even counting radiation. Even if you're 7 miles outside of the city, which again is really not that far, you'll be in a crisis situation and you'll need to immediately skedaddle because more terrible stuff is on the way. As a matter of fact, 7 miles away, you look at the blinding flash of light, you're going to go blind. It is biblical stuff.
Y'all, I think I mentioned this before, but there is a book that I think was very much a response to The Stand, or it was like, this lesser known writer who was doing his own version of The Stand. But I really, really like it. It's called Swan Song, and it's about a nuclear Holocaust situation, but with like magic as well. I don't know. It's not. McCammon, I think, is the writer's name. I want to say he's from the South, like he's from Alabama or something. But it's really good, and it's very The Standy, but it's also it really deals a lot more with the nuclear stuff rather than a disease or like a virus.
I remember that.
Worth checking out.
I must have read that because it's an older book, right?
It's an older book. It's from the 80s or the early 90s.
Yeah, worth a reread. I mean, one thing that a lot of people do get right in fiction, and unfortunately we've seen reflected in real world scenarios, is that in most of these situations, you will have very little time to react. That's why you have to be proactive. I mean, we can think of it in terms of 3 broad zones emanating from that detonation point. The innermost zone, game over. Sorry. At ground zero, temperatures can be higher than the surface of the sun, 100 million degrees Celsius. Within 1/1000th of a second, a massive fireball forms. This fireball alone, again, not even counting radiation, it stretches 2 to 2.5 miles in every conceivable direction. The temperatures, again, reaching over, at this time, 10 million Celsius. If you're too close to this explosion, if you're in this innermost zone, you are simply here and then gone. You vaporize. You vaporize so quickly, in fact, that your sensory array and your nervous system will not have time to communicate to your consciousness what's happening. You're gone.
Terrifying, but also, I mean, maybe a little bit of a mercy in a situation like this to be. I mean, it's hard to be super dark about it, but it's like, the alternative that we're going to get into, far worse than death in many cases.
It's a philosophical quandary, right? Because then if you are, it's strange because if you visit Hiroshima, you'll see that there was a nearby bank, and this bank had a pretty hardened vault where people were actually able to, or they attempted to retreat to safety within that vault. And it helped a little bit, but they were simply too close. So in some of these situations, we know that even if you get a shelter and you're in that innermost zone, even the shelter may not be able to help you, depending upon how deep it is and how layered it is. A lot of folks, if you are still kind of in this zone where you're not close enough to get vaporized, you may die immediately from the shock waves because all the construction materials will be weaponized. The flying glass, wood, debris, bits of stone, collapsing buildings, They will fly at tremendous speed. You can see pictures of this clearly, at the Hiroshima Museum, for instance, where the glass was flying with such energy that it embedded itself into stone instead of shattering. So it shatters first, and these become knives in the air. Chilling stuff.
Well, the shockwave itself, too, without anything weaponized in it, can obliterate you on the inside, essentially, from the way your body reacts to that force.
Yeah, because the shockwave can reach 650 miles per hour, up to 4 miles away from the detonation point. And the human body is, in some ways, tremendously resilient, but it is not built for that kind of PSI.
No, and we're still in the innermost zone, right? But this shockwave continues out.
Yes,
and that's why we're talking about all this weaponized stuff, because you can be within a pretty big radius of that detonation, and you're still going to be dealing with the stuff Ben's talking about.
Yeah, we're also taking pains to describe these situations where you don't really have a chance, so that we can all understand the importance of location here. Let's move to the secondary zone. This is a little bit less evil, but also before we continue, I have to remember, as Matt's saying, not just the shockwave, but the EMP and the fireball will create other fires, right? Including setting ablaze things that you would ordinarily not consider flammable. So this is a situation where stuff the bomb touched can touch you and result in your death. If you make it to the secondary zone, this is where, if you have a soundtrack, you're playing "Gimme Shelter." If you were not close enough to be vaporized or hit by those other things we just mentioned immediately, you'll notice that blinding flash, and we are being literal. If you look at it without protection, it will cause intense retinal burns up to 40 miles away, which just boggles my mind. 40 miles away. I, I don't know. I mean, wouldn't you instinctively look in that direction? When you hear the sound, you see the cloud.
Especially depending on the time of day, right? Imagine that it's close to dusk, or like the sun is going down or coming up and it's beginning to get dark and this happens. Then it is going to look as though the sun is rising from one direction, and you're probably going to look at it, and you're probably going to be wondering what the hell is that, which is going to make you look at it a little longer. And you're not going to hear anything either. Remember,
no, because light travels faster. Let's say you're in a slightly better position. Let's say you're still at least 20 miles away. You're indoors, right? So you're not drawn to that huge blinding light, even though it will be apparent if you're anywhere near a window. Let's say the weather conditions are favorable. You are not downwind for the moment. That's a huge piece of the puzzle here. This means you've got a good chance of surviving the initial impact, ... of the first bomb. That's all that means, because there may well be retaliation. And here I want to do a little bit of game theory with you guys. How likely or unlikely is it that a bomb would detonate, say, in Atlanta and then get hit again? I find that somewhat unlikely. I feel like you'd want to hit multiple urban centers, military bases.
Well, okay, so none of this is absolute, right? Because these are all like game theory based on what would happen if we've got rational actors and they're following through with previous plans that have existed throughout countries.
Yeah, versus like a messianic figure who has determined Atlanta is the seat of earthly sin, or versus like a mad dictator who is still pissed about the 96 Olympics.
Agreed. Or some form of what would be considered a terrorist attack, right? A one-off bomb that goes off for one reason or another, like you're describing. Everything I've read states that military targets would be first right? So you wouldn't see a bomb over Atlanta immediately. You'd see a bomb over a strategic base somewhere, or some kind of communications system or energy production. You would first go for military, then infrastructure, and then third would be city centers as like a make sure they don't recover, right?
Right, because then you're descending into what is called total war. And total war does not consider things like Geneva Conventions or things like the importance of not harming civilians. So it'd be first military and comms, actually, at the same time, and then infrastructure, because destroying one military base isn't good enough if the others can still talk to each other, or God forbid, in the case of the U.S., if they can signal the subs. Because the subs are the worst pop-up nuclear restaurant ever invented. They'll just roll up and deliver the mail.
They do have good food on them, at least from what I hear.
Of course. You know the trick, right? You know this is a very specific thing. I love that you're mentioning the food. A lot of people might not know this, but there is a omen that people working on subs can clock. And it's such a catch-22 crappy thing to happen. But the word on the street or the word on the sub is this: you can always tell if things are about to get hairy or inconvenient, or if your deployment is going to get extended, because the food one night will suddenly get better right before the announcement. Like instead of lasagna or meatloaf, boom, now we've got lobster tails, and I haven't had a steak in a year or 6 months. Oh,
hey, no shade on lasagna and meatloaf, though. Those are delightful.
Yeah, no shade. The food is better because you got to give people something for being in such an unnatural environment, and for having
comfort food,
and for having a hot rack.
Oh boy,
you know what a hot rack is?
Hot rack is, what is that again? That's like where you sleep in shifts.
Yes,
kind of.
Yeah, you don't have your own bed. You have your own bunks. Man, I know the head shakes.
Oh, the smells.
The smells.
Hot box is more like it, yeah.
But tell us about your life on a submarine to the degree that you are legally allowed to and comfortable. Got to throw that in. Anyway, let's say, let's keep improving this situation. What if we're in the outer zone, the third of the zones, right? This is where you are measurably safer from the immediate effects of the blast, but you are still at immense risk of the insidious, invisible danger, nuclear fallout, and radiation. This is where, if you've made it to a shelter, no matter how good you feel, get rid of your clothing. No time for modesty. Get rid of your clothing. Sanitize the crap out of your body, just like Bruce Willis in 6 Monkeys, 12 Monkeys. 6 Monkeys is the prequel.
Yeah,
that I made up.
Yeah. Only half the monkeys. Yeah.
Remember when they scrub him down and they decontaminate his entire body? You have to do that and put your clothing, assume it's contaminated, put it in a sealed bag and get it as far away from your shelter as possible.
But is he time traveling in that? What is the mechanism in 12 Monkeys?
The mechanism in time.
There is time travel.
There is time travel, and he gets basically deloused and decontaminated because in the world of 12 Monkeys in the present day, civilization has been destroyed. Mankind has almost been eradicated by a tremendously efficient virus.
Doesn't he have like time? What's the mechanism for the time travel? Isn't it like drugs? I want to say there's something like it's not like he steps into a cool time machine. It's something very like different and ugly. Exactly. Yes. Thank you.
And it's the director was it the guy who made Brazil?
Oh, it's Terry Gilliam.
That's
100%. Right. So yeah, very, very much so. Love Terry.
Really quickly. I'm so sorry. I keep bringing this up. This is that graphic novel, The Secret History, that, I just remembered a mechanism in there is refined or concentrated ergot, but it's concentrated in a way that the person who takes it is able to phase in, like almost travel through his mind into another time and place, and then comes back through his mind loop thing again. It's crazy.
Yeah. Because it's not necessarily the physical body traveling. right?
Yes.
Yes.
But then others can like see him and hear him and he exists, but it's almost as though he's projecting internally into some other place. Oh, crazy.
Or kind of, it also makes us think of Lost, which is, oh, geez. All right.
Oh, yeah.
It's not Penny's boat, guys. So,
oh, dear.
Speaking of really up-to-date references.
Reminder that we still don't know what the smoke monster was. We still don't know.
Yeah, they never really. Wait a minute. No, it was sort of a guardian figure,
but we don't
the
know
islands.
Natural form of the Man in Black, or one of the forms.
Do we know that?
I don't know that
Do
we
the
know that. It's been a
writers
long
know
time. The writers don't know.
Sorry,
They didn't
I have
really
no
know where they were
compunction
going.
about saying that. It's
no, not I.
Yeah,
no.
I don't have a problem.
Remember when I got yelled at for saying that they were all dead? Because I don't even think that's even true. Like, that was sort of like a bit of a, what's the word? A simplistic view. The writers saying they never were going to do that. And then a lot of people being mad because it seemed like that's what they were doing. But I don't even know if that's what they were doing. But
sometimes
I did get yelled at.
Ambiguous endings are a great part of a story, you know?
I dig it.
When you don't explain
Absolutely.
everything, that's how H.P. Lovecraft worked. Excuse me. I can't violate the official story about his death. That's also why Sinners is so compelling, because there are already two other stories that you never really learn, right? I'm not going to spoil them. And so with this, we're going to pause for a word from our sponsors. Let's assume we're in the outer zone, we're in a shelter, and the first thing you want to know is, can I hear some ads? All right, we have returned, folks. Assuming you've managed to survive all the terrible, terrifying things we just mentioned, you are probably already bunkered down, or you're on the way to a shelter. You may also, depending on how things go in your neck of the woods, you may have made the decision to take your chances attempting to leave the area. Please know that's going to be a tall order. We're going to be racing radiation that can spread for hundreds of miles, and it contaminates everything it touches. It's like evil glitter on the wind, but invisible. Not my best comparison.
No, evil glitter. I think it's fantastic. Glitter's already a little evil and insidious, and it's in its own right. No, I dig it.
We found, speaking of things we dig, we found a great, more recent model for what you should do, like your rubric for action in these situations. It's from a atmospheric scientist named Michael Dillon over at the Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory in California. And what he finds calls into question some of the U.S. government's official advice. And they do have, of course, official advice. It's pretty clear cut, but it's also at a certain point, the official advice is very much, you're on your own.
So one day, Michael Dillon's family, the scientist, was talking to him about his day job and literally asked him what they should do if in the event of a nuclear fallout situation, if they saw that, doom cloud looming on the horizon.
And you thought your 6-year-old asked weird questions, right, folks?
I did. The official U.S. stance, as we discussed earlier, which in large part pretty useless, was take shelter in the nearest and most protective building. To your point, Ben, even the folks that were inside the heavily fortified bank vault did not escape clean.
Yeah. Oh, and this is still the prevailing theory in many countries. We just mentioned on Strange News how Germany is creating a bunch of shelters. So places that human beings who get early warning of a nuclear detonation on its way, or that one just occurred, places that you go either underground, right, or inside a protected, heavily concrete building. But again, like, wait, are we saying that's not what we should do?
Well, the U.S. stance is saying take shelter in the nearest building that essentially has the smallest amount of windows and looks like it has the most concrete.
So the long lines building?
Exactly. But they'll probably shoot you upon attempt to entry in that situation, unless you know the right hand signals. Yeah. But the difference here with Germany is that they are building structures dedicated to the purpose of shelter. They're not banks that happen to be wrought of stone. So, look, if you're in California, you know this well. The idea of finding nearest most protective building is pretty great if you're in the Northeast, where people have a lot of basements, right? They have a lot of cellars, stuff like that. But basements, for instance, aren't that common in California, where Dillon is based. Michael Dillon, the scientist. Also, early transit. Another recommendation is a tall milkshake, given both the short amount of lead time from deployment to detonation, as well as the fact that you can assume all transit routes will be non-navigable. They will be clogged. If we're talking trains, they're not going to be working. If we're talking arteries and veins of the American interstate system, they're going to be clogged very quickly. That's going to result in car accidents, and there are not going to be first responders available for most of that.
So that's why you need the zombie apocalypse vehicles, right? So you can just go off road on them highways.
Mm-hmm. Or to have a map in your head of, especially if you're lucky enough to live in a more rural environment, have a map in your head of the back roads. The back roads will tend to be more helpful. That's one of my favorite things about not living in cities, man. I'm more and more divided on living in cities. I don't know about you guys.
Oh my gosh. And depending on where if we're talking about a bigger thing that's going down while you find yourself in this situation, your GPS may no longer work, right? Your ability to navigate via phone may not work.
Yes. Always have a paper map. Check out our episode on Bug Out Bags 101 or Go Bags, if you feel more comfortable with that phrase. Yeah, a paper map and the ability to navigate that map is huge. It's a good skill to have. There's also this issue that Dillon finds with the usual survival logic. There are serious gaps in it because a lot of the logic was legacy thinking. It had been mapped obsessively by boffins on both sides of the Cold War, and they were prioritizing their game theory on large-scale nuclear exchanges, thinking, like hit military and comms first, and then hit infrastructure. Then, if they don't bend the knee, start breaking the civilians. They thought of it in terms of trading cities and figuring out who runs out of bombs first. They did not prioritize how the average person could survive outside of the ruling parties, the ruling class. And so what Dillon finds here is fascinating, and he says the hard part is figuring out what variables matter most when you're on the run. And it's kind of like this happens all the time in video games. You're in an environment where you're damaged a certain amount of points per second, and you have to get to something else. I'm thinking,
right? They call it like bleed damage, I believe is the term.
Ooh.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So that happens at Fallout, right?
Or burn, 100%. Yeah. Anything that stacks or that has a clock on it for sure.
Well, yeah. I mean, games like Fallout and Metro 2033, I think it was, in the Metro series, it's all based on like taking on rads, right? Or the amount of radiation.
And mitigating them with drugs, Rad Away or Rad X or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of the situation that Dillon is gaming through. He's saying the longer you stay outside, the higher your dose of radiation, right? But radiation intensity also lessens over time. Thankfully, it lessens pretty quickly, quicker than the movies would have us imagine. So your total radiation dose is therefore a function of when you step outside, your distance from the detonation, and how long you run before you reach shelter or a better shelter, and then how much shielding you get from your quote-unquote local environment while you're out there. So a radiation suit of some sort is going to be much better than chinos and your my mama told me tank top. We're just working in a shout out to my mama told me.
They have tank tops?
They should. Langston, David, you got that one from us. I don't know. I don't see a lot of tank tops.
How about a sleeveless, my mama told me shirt? I would buy that.
There you go.
Yeah. How about a sleeveless turtleneck? My mama told me.
I've been rocking a Bucky's tie-dye tank top lately since I've gotten all tatted up. It's
nice.
pretty dope.
Is it? You may want to keep that one for when you get in the shelter.
I think that's probably
the
true.
Radiation. I don't know. I haven't read the tag on that tank top.
Radiation suntan.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, hold on 1 minute. Let's hear a word from our sponsors and come back to this exciting, pretty harrowing thing we're doing now.
And we've returned. In the end, the math boils down to this critical number, the ratio of time you spend hunkering down in your first shelter to the time you spend moving to a higher quality shelter. And this model assumes that the first place you go to ground is not going to be your ideal place. It'll just be the place you could find. So he works out what happens with a variety of shelter options and transit times. You can read the model in full online. For low yield nuclear detonations, you can do better than just sheltering in place, but you will need a watch and good knowledge of your surroundings. If the current place you're in is not ideal and there's a higher quality shelter you somehow know is less than 5 minutes away, the model says you should skedaddle. You should get there as soon as you can. If you have a poor shelter, but a better shelter is available further away, you should get to it no later than 30 minutes after detonation. Depending on the size of the city, if everybody follows this advice to the letter, you could save between 10,000 and 100,000 lives. But I don't think everybody's going to follow that advice. You know what I mean? It's kind of like not too long ago when there was an evacuation order given to parts of Tehran, right, with oncoming attacks. Everybody evacuated if they could.
Yeah.
There weren't people who said, oh, the news is telling me my neighborhood is safe, so I guess I'm just going to kick back. Nobody does that in these events.
I got a horrifying thought, guys.
Oh, dear.
That's 10,000 to 100,000 mouths that need to eat food.
Right.
And to drink potable water.
Yeah.
And to be able to, go to the bathroom safely and sleep warmly, oh my God.
And drain limited resource capacity as well. And then, our thinking becomes very Soviet at that point. And these are just hypotheticals, but they do need to be discussed. Would it be possible to calculate that a certain number of people who would be a resource drain might indeed stay home if they were told to? How much trouble could you save if you just told them to stay home?
I've got a vaccine you need to take, Ben. It's really important that you take at least 2 now and then 3 more later and then 7. The 7th one, that's key.
Yeah, that's vaccine plus. Yeah. I mean, these are dark things, and that gets into real politics and dirty businesses that we don't often discuss in mainstream media, but are very much real conversations that occur. Let's talk about something more true. Okay, you make it to your shelter. Why is your shelter the best? It's because it's made of concrete or brick. It's ideally buried in the ground. Basements and subway systems are going to be better than the bank vault example we're using because they are so much deeper, right? And they have tons of dirt around them. You got tons of metal and infrastructure that could protect you. Of course, the ground could collapse around you, but that's something you're just going to have to roll the dice on.
Yep. Most preferential is a lead-lined refrigerator that's have everything taken out of it, and then you just take shelter in that refrigerator. As we've seen, Indiana Jones survived an incredible nuclear explosion.
Yes.
Yeah, he was just aces. Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess there must have been some intense padding in that refrigerator too, because he just popped out of it.
Didn't it get chonked around? Like,
yes,
it very. I haven't seen that one. I skipped it.
He would have been just a glob of human-sized anthropologist jelly in real life.
Yes, indeed. Right.
Oh, don't hide in your car, and please don't try to hide in a mobile home.
How are we thinking about desks, though, Ben? Are desks the clear, magical safety solution that they were promised?
Of course.
Oh, unless you have a Cybertruck. Definitely take shelter in your Cybertruck. You'll be
Have they made that claim?
Go.
Have they made that claim?
No.
Wouldn't put it past them. I'm not going to lie.
No, there's too much glass on it. But if you
couldn't even survive a bow and arrow shot, let alone a nuclear explosion.
If you find yourself in a building, you're indoors when this is happening, then head to the center of the building, as far away from windows and outer walls as you can. Head to the basement if they have a basement. And again, that's going to be regionally dependent. Essentially, the more layers you place between yourself and the outside, the better. And look, we love improvisation. We love improv. But start with a plan. In this case, you don't want to just sort of see a bright light or a mushroom cloud in the sky and say, I'm really good at yes-anding. It's probably not going to have the ideal outcome. The most crucial aspect for nuclear survival is not putting yourself in a place where you have to react on the fly. It's putting yourself in a place where you can leverage your proactive mechanisms, the stuff you did in the past to prepare.
Yeah, like getting used to the taste of human meat. Sorry.
Also, or at the very least, ground up insects.
Sure, ground up insects actually a way better choice because as we discussed in our cannibalism episode, this sounds weird, but here's the truth. One mistake people make about cannibalism is that they don't do it until it's too late and the flesh they would have eaten has already been exhausted of nutrients. And that's why you're going to encounter something called rabbit starvation. Rabbit like the hop animal, not like a sick dog.
That has to do with the speed of metabolism, doesn't it? In some respect.
Yeah, and the fact that usually when people are driven to survival cannibalism, not religious cannibalism or, just for funsies varieties, when it's survival cannibalism, they're usually eating the flesh of someone who's already died of starvation, which means there's very little nutritional benefit in eating that flesh, which naturally, if we're being cold about it, tells you that the smartest, I wouldn't say smart, but the ethics aside, the most efficient survival cannibalism is to choose someone in advance and maybe immobilize them and then eat them slowly over time before they themselves starve.
Yeah.
Got it. No, I sort of goofed. It's definitely more to do with the nutritional quality of the food source.
Well, that's why you got to get a group of friends together who don't mind murdering folks. Hey, this is going to be fun.
Or do the Stephen King thing from, what was it? What was the story where the doctor is marooned and has to slowly eat one piece of himself at a time, and then he bandages himself up. Mm-hmm. Survivor style or Survivor, something like that.
Yeah.
It's intense.
That was a good one. Yeah.
It is a good one. And no supernatural aspects at all. It's just like, very much a story of brutal survival.
Mm.
Yuck.
Well, this is thankfully not a point you're at yet. In this case, you're not at that point because you have other steps in your plan. Your plan includes communication strategies with friends, loved ones, family members, along with known routes and redundancies for shelter and escape. And I think I can't remember if we talked about this on air or off mic, but did you guys grow up with those kind of escape plans? Like your family ever talked about them with you?
My parents weren't smart like that.
Yeah, for like fires and never about large scale disaster, like the whole town goes down or something like
never
that.
How to escape the city. This is the route. This is the meetup point.
That's cool, I guess. But it's also, I can imagine that altering my trajectory a little bit.
I thought it was normal until I made other friends.
Uh-huh.
I thought we all had those. But I guess, every family is a country its own, right? So,
No doubt.
Look, in a mass casualty event, the reason your communication plan is going to be crucial is because most people are going to be unprepared. They're going to panic. They're going to flee. One thing that blockbuster movies get right is that there are a lot of people who are
carrying
perhaps
guns.
carrying guns. I would say also not at their most rational, because they are consumed with saying, hey, my kid is at a daycare across town, right? My mom or my spouse is in the hospital 20 miles north. So forget everything. I'm going there first, even if the news tells me that part of the city has been flattened. I'm still going to go.
Yeah.
That's one of the big human aspects, very understandable, that throws all of these mass movement strategies out the window, no matter how well governments and Rand Corporation research them. You can't account for that.
It's an intense thing. You guys could both like feel this, I'm sure, but I think in particular, Noel, you'd feel this, just this concept of knowing that you have all these plans in place and you might survive, but your child is just going to be out there in the wind somewhere. Like, could you make that decision of, I'm going to put my plan into place where I'm going to survive without finding your kid first?
I don't think most people could.
I don't think I would be able to do that.
No.
I think very few people could.
Yeah, and for sure, and I think we've talked about this in the past when we've talked about nuclear fallout stories. Barefoot Gin is an example of a child that's kind of out on their own, and also the Grave of the Fireflies is another story about the nuclear attacks in Japan, where a sibling, older sibling, is taking care of their young sibling, and it is a lot, but it really does show that untethered kind of divided family situation that Matt's describing. That the thought of that is terrifying and heartbreaking.
And Grave of the Fireflies is based on real world events, which are
Right.
I think I sent you guys some stuff from the Hiroshima Museum, but these are very real things that can happen, and that's why having a plan, if at all possible, for redundant escape routes that lead to the same meetup place, even if it's far away. That's why it's a really smart thing to do, right? The interstate is clogged up. Luckily, I know that I can go this way. It'll take a little bit longer, but it's rural and people aren't going to be as likely to have rendered that innavigable. And then we can, meet up at, I'll say it because it's no longer the case now, but a family relation has had a compound way out in the boonies. And that was always our spot. And I knew how to get there multiple ways. A weird thing to think about in retrospect. But if you can do that, that is very smart. We also can't assume access to resources like potable water, food, medicine, comms, equipment, or fuel. It's great to have all of that in advance. Even if it's a mobile kit, like a duffel bag in the trunk of your car, as long as you're always kind of close to your car, or stored in a safe place you'll be able to access. And then we talked about this too. One thing people miss is that it's not enough just to have those supplies. You got to check them. You got to test them. MREs don't necessarily start off good, but even they can go bad if they're stored at the wrong temperature for long enough time.
That's why you need the tortilla bucket. New from Conglomco.
Oh,
yes,
no.
Yeah.
New Chipotle flavoring.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. This is 100% not inaccurate because a lot of companies are selling this stuff, leveraging fear, right? You don't need a bunch of super high priced, bespoke stuff, right? You can go to a lot of local bulk grocery suppliers and you can get the same thing for pennies on the dollar,
Yep.
Yep.
Bruce's canned yams. If you don't have a bunch of those in your basement, you should get some now. Bruce's canned yams.
Little Dottie's canola oil. A little man with a big deal. You don't really need canola oil. Or, you know what? We don't know your life. Maybe you do. Maybe you're like, civilization will fall. I will keep my canola. There are tons of resources available for this, including things like checking schedules. You know, it would be similar to that Twilight Zone episode, spoilers 3, 2, 1, where the guy who always wants more time to read survives a nuclear attack. It breaks his glasses.
My glasses.
Imagine making it to a shelter. You and all your loved ones are safe. You check your huge industrial sized can of garbanzo beans or whatever, and it expired 3 years ago. Tut tut.
You can still eat them.
I'd still do it.
You'll have to try. I mean, do check to see if the can is dented or, God forbid, bloated. But yeah, you'll be in a non-Michelin star situation. Just deal with that. You can also check out shows like our friends Casual Preppers for more. So why don't we take a second when we're talking short term? Let's talk about fallout. So it's radioactive particles rise to the air with the mushroom cloud. They settle back to ground eventually, not immediately. This is one of the big dangers for a lot of people because it's invisible. The debris is especially dangerous in the first few hours. You have that small but critical window of about 10 to 20 minutes before the fallout begins to arrive. So if you do have supplies, but they're in your house 20 miles away, don't attempt to get there. Just don't try it. You're going to get irradiated. Hunker down, block all the windows, ingress, exit points you can, and this is the toughest part for a lot of people, especially if you have a loved one that you're trying to reach. If you want to survive, you have to plan to stay put for a minimum of 3 days or about 72 hours.
Yeah. Hey, if you still have air conditioning, should you turn it off?
Yes.
Why?
I don't know. I mean, I'd be baffled if there was still power.
I know, that's the thing. But if you still have power, imagine somebody who has prepped a whole bunch and still has, some kind of power source, whether it's backup generators or something like that, but they've got still an air source that is coming in from the outside that isn't fully filtered or something. Whoops. You just have to remember, like, you're exposing yourself if you do something like that.
Yeah, and not in a fun Skinamax way. It gets bad real quick. You've already sanitized your body. You've gotten rid of your clothing, as we discussed earlier. And once that's done, you take inventory of supplies. For a lot of gamers in the crowd, that's the most fun part of the game. What do we have already? How long will it last? What do we need? When will we need it? We can't assume help is on the way. Our most valuable resources are food, water, medicine, and communications ability. This is the thing that gets me too about communication ability, because we're putting ourselves in a quarantined situation. What is the most likely way we would get news from the outside? Would it be other people banging on the shelter? Would a crank radio work? Who has a crank radio other than us? And we're terrible examples.
Well, I don't know. I would say you need a ham radio or smoke signals.
Smoked ham radio.
I like smoked ham radio. Yeah. Let's make that a thing. We're getting, I guess we're getting close to lunchtime as well. But I don't know how. It'd be tricky to figure out how to communicate with the outside world, how to get news about what's happening. In the short term, you have to wait for the radiation levels to drop. And there's something called the 7-10 rule, which I don't think we discussed in our previous episode, but it states that after 7 hours, radiation from a nuclear weapon the intensity will decrease to 1/10 of its starting level. After 48 hours, it's 1% of the original intensity. So it's a waiting game. And on the upside, this gives you time to think about the midterms. How do we hear news about stuff outside the shelter? Are there more weapons in the air? Has the government made any statement about the military or emergency assistance? Is it safe to go outside yet? Are there specific shelters set up like the ones Germany has planning? Um, you'll also need to start thinking about how long you can stay in that shelter past 72 hours. Water is going to be the key thing there, even more important than food. Because if you're a human adult, you need between 2.7 to 3.7 liters of water a day. That can come from beverages that are not water, right? Coffee, soda, whatever. It can come from food. About 20% of the average human adult's water intake is from food, but that number doesn't count anything other than water for ingestion. So washing clothes with water you could have drank, flushing commodes with water you could have drank. That makes a difference. Water is going to play a big role in how you determine your next actions.
I'm trying to imagine, guys, the drive that it would take to do all of this stuff that would be necessary in hopes of simply surviving. I don't know.
And surviving to what end? What kind of world do you return to?
Well, I guess maybe if you could somehow wrap your mind around the possibility of something better being created. We've seen it over and over and over again in popular culture about like, that's the concept. We're going to survive this and we're going to rebuild something better, something more equitable, something more whatever. Just good God, it would take the time it would take to get to that place. Like, I don't know how you put yourself in a mental framework to just get through literally 72 hours.
Yeah. And it's such a gambit as well, because there's so many unknowns. I mean, another thing that would be rare for people to have is a radiation detection device.
Yeah.
Like, who pulled up their Geiger counter? Who's fiddling with that right now? A lot of people.
My buddy Nick. Remember Nick?
Yeah.
We're talking about
like
UAP.
Yeah.
He's got a crazy sophisticated nuclear detection device he's out using right now.
Great. Well, tell him though, hold on to it and give us a good rec, and talk about price points, because that can help you determine if it's safe to go outside, but a lot of people aren't going to have that, because why would you? It's not a multifunctional thing. You don't use it for other stuff. It doesn't also brew coffee, which is another great idea. If we can make a radiation detector device that does other stuff, more people will buy them.
That's a good idea.
That's good. It's up there with smoked ham radio, right?
Yeah.
Radiation
Why not?
detecting espresso.
It's a tool and a snack.
There we go. So the concept of long-term survival is really tough to answer. Maybe this is where we end. It folds in more and more variables, and a lot of those are going to be impossible to grasp until you're in that situation. Things like, does the government continue? Is help finally coming? Could I and my loved ones escape to a safer region? Are there humans that we need to worry about on the way, right? That's where the collapse of rule of law will naturally create, that mixed with desperation will naturally create some very hard case characters.
Especially if you've got stuff and they don't have stuff.
Right. I was hanging with a dear friend of mine. I don't know if you guys ever met him, but he has very different philosophies than me and probably all of us. And he told me one time when we were talking about some preparation things we were doing, he said, I don't have to worry about preparing because I have this. And he held up one of his firearms and then he pointed to other houses in this area. And he said, which means I have this and I have this and I have this as well.
Good luck, buddy.
Yeah, I don't know, man, because you don't know what they have. Anyway, it's a bad way to think as well. We hope this all stays theoretical. We think this is important to know. There's a lot of stuff they don't want you to know that we discussed here. Full-on nuclear war is still luckily considered an unlikely scenario, at least that is until it happens. So we'd love to hear if you and your loved ones have bug-out plans, routes prepared, shelters, or without being nihilistic, are you one of the people who would just rather things end quickly versus sticking around to experience all the consequences. Tell us your thoughts. Thanks as always so much for tuning in, folks. We can't wait to hear from you. You can email us, you can give us a call, or you can find us on the lines until the EMP hits.
That's right. You can find us at the handle Conspiracy Stuff, where we exist on the lines. That is to say, on Facebook with our Facebook group, Here's Where It Gets Crazy, on X, FKA Twitter, and on YouTube with video content galore for your perusing enjoyment. On Instagram and TikTok, however, we're Conspiracy Stuff Show.
If you want to call us, we have a phone number. It is 1-833-STDWYTK. When you call in, give yourself a cool nickname and let us know within the message if we can use your name and message on the air. If you'd like to send us an email, we are
the entities that read each piece of correspondence we receive. Be well aware yet unafraid. Sometimes the void writes back. Conspiracy@iHeartRadio.com.
Stuff They Don't Want You to Know is a production of iHeartRadio. For more podcasts from iHeartRadio, visit the iHeartRadio app, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen to your favorite shows.